Tonight, President Trump ups the rhetoric against Somali immigrants in Minnesota. This comes after prosecutors uncovered fraud that largely benefited parts of the state's community.
4:51 a.m. Street Lewis Park, Minnesota. The city lay submerged in silence. Homes were sealed beneath a crust of winter ice. Not a single window was lit. To the 50,000 residents sleeping inside, this was just another quiet morning in a safe, well-managed suburb. But inside a federal command room nearby, a massive digital map pulsed red. Critical points were marked across the city grid. The threat was active. For months, FBI and D agents had been tracking something they couldn't initially explain. Crime linked to an underground network embedded deep within the Somali community was rising everywhere. At the same time, reports kept flooding in from hospitals, police precincts, and social service offices. When analysts layered the data, the numbers were no longer statistics. They were red alerts. Drug overdose deaths had surged 328%. Armed violence had increased 257%. Human trafficking networks had doubled in size, and the financial damage was staggering. Investigators confirmed that $2.3 billion in welfare funds had been siphoned off through front-facing community charities. Authorities now feared the real figure could be closer to $7 billion. Criminals from Somalia had entered the United States using forged identification. Welcomed by legal loopholes no one wanted to seal, they obtained benefits with ease, living comfortably while money was quietly transferred overseas. This was not isolated abuse. This was a network operating inside the American system. Agents stood motionless, staring at the data pinned across the wall. Every line converged on a single name: Asha Mohammed Noor, 44 years old, the mayor of Street Lewis Park.
This originally started with 8 local mayors of the Brainerd Lakes area seeing the policies coming out of the capital that are hurting our industry. We're very focused on tourism.
To the public, she was a model of integration and effective governance. Her office was constantly bathed in media attention. She stood beside police leadership pledging tough action against crime. Her public approval rating exceeded 68%. But if the intelligence was accurate, she wasn't protecting America. She was exploiting it. If you support the brave men and women of the FBI and ICE who risk their lives to take down these corrupt officials, hit the like button right now and comment, "Go FBI" below. Let them know we stand with them. Behind closed doors, Mayor Noor was building the exact opposite of safety. By the end of 2023, she had initiated a parallel system that mirrored the city's legal structure, but answered only to her. Using executive authority, she approved directives that bypassed oversight. The result was the creation of 29 shell companies registered as logistics, sanitation, and consulting firms. None had legitimate employees. Through these entities, 1,150 individuals with criminal records were quietly embedded into the community using forged documentation. These individuals were not integrated. They were deployed between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Investigators recorded 192 vehicle departures from targeted residential zones every night. No license plates, no traffic stops. Street cameras went dark for exactly 11 minutes each time. At the center of it all was a deal that stunned federal investigators. Mayor Noor had aligned herself with CJNG, one of the most violent cartels in the Western Hemisphere. The terms were brutally simple: protection in exchange for profit. Over a span of 24 months, the network moved 4.4 tons of fentanyl and heroin with an estimated black market value exceeding $440 million. It was all staged for a late winter surge. Silence was bought. Oversight mechanisms were dissembled. This was not an immigration issue. This was an infiltration, a hostile structure operating inside the system faster than federal surveillance could track it. At 5:57 a.m., the situation inside the Minnesota Federal Command Center shifted instantly.
We believe at least 2 of these drug dealers were playing Russian roulette with people's lives, pushing pills that were disguised as the prescription painkiller oxycodone.
Surveillance ended. Enforcement began. All units execute immediately. In a coordinated strike, 1,175 federal agents were mobilized. The FBI, D, and Homeland Security units moved in lockstep. Roads were sealed. Armored convoys advanced from pre-positioned staging points near Interstate 92. Helicopters lifted off from rooftop landing pads, rotors tearing through the winter sky. Operational data poured in. 26 locations were confirmed as high-risk warehouses, apartments, and covert offices. Live intelligence identified 129 violent offenders already in position. At 5:59 a.m., surveillance cameras captured an individual exiting the rear of Mayor Noor's building carrying a secured data storage device. Inside the lead command vehicle, radios crackled. Unmarked trucks began rolling. The fight did not unfold as a single strike. It erupted as a synchronized collapse. Between 6:01 a.m. and 6:15 a.m., the network was hit at 41 separate points across 5 states. In Wisconsin, the first breach set the tone. Within 4 minutes of entry, agents neutralized Abdi Ramon, a veteran enforcer responsible for coordinating night convoys. He attempted to trigger a data wipe protocol while firing from a stairwell. He was taken down by 6:04 a.m. Nevada units reported contact at a tax service front. Hassan Ledgermi, the cartel's primary money handler, attempted escape carrying encrypted ledgers. He was captured after a foot chase lasting 312 seconds. Inside the building, agents seized $4.2 million in cash and 19 burner phones. The violence escalated in northern Minnesota. At a rural compound outside Baggy, federal teams encountered fortified resistance. 3 armed sentries opened fire from elevated positions. After a 7-minute engagement, the perimeter was breached. Inside the compound, agents discovered 512 pounds of synthetic narcotics and 5 industrial pill presses. Packaging materials were sufficient to produce over 11 million doses.
Fentanyl is a potent drug that can kill with even the smallest of doses. But what is it? How is it made? And what is being done to track the people smuggling fentanyl into the area?
Analysts later confirmed the drugs were scheduled for distribution across 14 metropolitan areas within 10 days. If you want to see more of these networks exposed and taken down, hit the subscribe button right now. We are tracking every update on this case. On interstate routes, interdiction teams closed the trap. At 6:09 a.m., armored SUVs boxed in a transport vehicle near the Iowa corridor. The driver attempted to ram through the blockade, but was disabled. Inside were 118 unregistered firearms and encrypted radios programmed to law enforcement frequencies. By 6:12 a.m., command data showed the scale of the collapse. 1,380 suspects detained nationwide. 4.4 tons of narcotics seized. $46.8 million in cash frozen. The final blow landed quietly. At 6:15 a.m., agents intercepted Amina Sidian, Mayor Noor's chief administrative fixer, attempting to exit a secured building with a hard drive containing approval chains. Her arrest tied the entire structure directly back to the mayor's office. When the gunfire stopped, the truth was undeniable. This was not a street gang dismantled by luck. It was a hostile infrastructure dismantled by force. And in 14 minutes, it was gone. By 8:12 a.m., the scope of what had happened in Minnesota reached Washington, D.C. Overnight briefings turned into emergency sessions. This was no longer a local take, it was a national security crisis. Within 6 hours, federal auditors ordered the suspension of funding to 12 nonprofit organizations connecting to the Minnesota network. By noon, that number grew to over 470. On paper, they served the public. In reality, investigators believed $2.3 billion had been diverted. Treasury officials warned that the true exposure could approach $7 billion, one of the largest domestic financial abuses in U.S. history. But what alarmed officials even more was the pattern. By early afternoon, analysis units flagged 17 additional cities showing warning markers, identical to Street Lewis Park.
The DEA shared images with CBS2 of fentanyl that was hidden in a toy box or here in a gas tank.
The same funding structures, the same nonprofit shells. Minnesota was not the origin. It was the proof of concept. At 6:41 p.m., a development shifted the investigation again. Technicians accessing the recovered server found metadata pointing outward. Multiple states, multiple times. The threat was no longer outside the system, it was inside it. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, the Attorney General authorized a federal integrity task force. Their mandate was unprecedented. Identify and neutralize internal enablers without regard for rank. Within 72 hours, analysts matched approval signatures. The same names appeared across 11 states. Records showed that 29 public officials had been directly bribed to delay audits or reroute inspections. Another 46 were flagged for willful negligence. One of the first arrests occurred quietly. A former federal prosecutor, once praised for his integrity, was taken into custody. Evidence revealed he had blocked at least 14 grand jury subpoenas linked to the nonprofit oversight. His actions delayed investigations long enough for nearly $600 million to vanish overseas. The financial counterstrike was decisive. Treasury enforcement teams froze $9.6 billion in assets across domestic and international accounts. Shell companies collapsed overnight. The cash flow that sustained the network did not slow. It stopped. The investigation revealed a chilling truth. The network didn't fear law enforcement. It feared attention. It bought silence. The internal purge was not dramatic. There were no press conferences, just files opened, doors closed, and careers ended. but the message was unmistakable. For the first time in years, the system had turned inward. The operation in Minnesota dismantled a network, but it exposed a vulnerability that handcuffs alone could not solve.
Tell us about these latest ICE operations and why the administration chose to send agents to the Twin Cities to focus on the Somali community.
No single official could have built such a system alone. It survived because 1,800 routine administrative actions went unquestioned over 5 years. The human cost was impossible to ignore. Health agencies confirmed that the fentanyl distribution linked to this network coincided with over 6,400 overdose deaths across multiple states. Families buried relatives, entire communities aged overnight from grief. This was never a story about a single city. It was about unchecked authority, about systems designed for trust being exploited by those who understood that trust rarely comes with verification. As the final report was filed, one retired agent summarized the lesson. Democracy doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly when no one is watching. The streets of Street Lewis Park are quiet again, but something else has been awakened. A recognition that freedom is not preserved by promises, but by oversight. The vigilance that was missing has finally returned, and that responsibility now belongs to everyone who chooses not to look away. If you believe that corrupt officials who betray their communities should face the maximum penalty, comment justice below. Stay vigilant.